welcome to Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 106 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 32 of A Clash of Kings, that's Sansa 3.
And you know the drill, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, and hopefully we're going to provide you with some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the TV show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information that will help you follow along, particularly if you're not reading with us. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing just fine, how about you?
Not too bad. Mustn't complain.
All right.
Although, as I pointed out to you earlier, I don't know if you followed the link, but my team is now last 92 of 92 in the English Football League. So,
Really?
mm-hmm.
Wow.
Three games, no points, one goal scored. Yeah.
Oh man. So in your so Oldham is in the lowest tier, in the last spot of the lowest tier. What happens?
We fall. You fall to the fifth tier. There is a fifth tier, but I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about.
It's early, right? It is.
It is early. It's very, very early in the season,
Yes,
but
that's
it's
what I
about
thought.
as bad a start as you could have. It is exactly as bad a start as you could have.
Yeah, I guess so.
So I have a slightly funny story for you.
All right, let's slightly laugh at it.
Yes. So I've got a problem under my house, and I've had workmen going under my house.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That's not
and
good.
Under my house, no, it's not great. Under my house, I have the furnace for my HVAC system is under the house.
Okay.
And to keep it dry down there, there's a pump which sits in a little sort of like hollow near the furnace and pumps water out of so it stays dry down there. And one of the guys under the house said, it's wet down there and that pump is not working. He said, I can see that the power is onto it, but it's not working. It's sitting in water and not pumping it. He said, it's easy. You can fix that yourself, Simon. Just go to Home Depot and buy a pump and, buy an equivalent pump and just switch it out. Very easy. You can do it. I was like, oh, okay. You don't know how hopeless I am.
He's
To
telling
me, he
you
was saying
to do this.
He doesn't know me well, but you know what? Honestly, his confidence gave me confidence.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So I started looking at Home Depot for pumps, but I really wasn't sure what I was looking for. But then I noticed that Home Depot has an app, and the app has a function whereby if you're not sure what it is that's broken, you can take a photograph of it, and the Home Depot app will explain what it is that you need.
Well, how convenient is that?
I was like, that is what I needed. That's great. So it's under my house, which is pretty low. So I'm crawling like a commando with my phone, getting filthy dirty.
It's been
it is
raining
wet.
a lot recently.
Oh, yeah. It was really dirty down there because the pump isn't working, so it's particularly wet down there.
Right. Yes, I guess so.
So I get there, and it's just a mad scene, So I've got mud all over me. I'm cleaning the mud off the camera, of my phone camera. And I get the Home Depot app up, and it says, take a photo of the thing. And I take a photo of the thing. And it comes up with the word pump.
Oh, what would you do without that? Oh.
And then it proceeded to list the 20,000 different pumps I could buy.
Whoa, thank goodness.
So I shuffle out commando style backwards, cursing
the whole way. Oh, that's classic. That's good stuff right there. Pump. Oh, man. Well, okay, so
the Home Depot app works, but not quite to the level you think it might work.
It needs a little more refinement.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's, I'm not sure how helpful that is.
No. I mean, I guess if it was an object you had no idea what it was.
Right, literally,
it might
no
be
idea
helpful,
what this is.
But I knew that was a pump. I just didn't know what kind of pump.
Right, and you still didn't.
No, it's just a pump.
Oh, goodness, that's good stuff.
All right, let's get down to business. How did we leave Sansa? So last time we saw Sansa, she finally had just a little ember of hope. She's still captive of the Lannisters in King's Landing, but drunken Ser Dontos Hollard had approached her to offer her rescue. No plan exactly yet, but she would be ready when the time came. Even bumping into Sandor Clegane on the way back couldn't dampen her optimism. Mackelly, why don't we give them the summary of this one?
Well, Sansa is summoned by said Sandor Clegane to attend the king. It can only be bad news. She practices her "my brother is a traitor" line, and the Hound scoffs at how well trained she is. She's taken to the archery butts. Not a great sign, because this is where Joffrey kills defenseless animals with his new crossbow. And when she arrives, nobody can look her in the eye, but Ser Dontos, on his toy horse, wishes her courage.
She falls to her knees, but Joffrey says that won't save her. Lancel reads the charge that Robb destroyed Ser Stafford Lannister's army in Oxcross using sorcery and cannibalism and all kinds of arcane ways.
Right.
Joffrey doubles down on Starks as sorcerers, reminding all, incorrectly, that Lady savaged him. Sansa is not so cowed as to let that pass. It was not Lady that savaged him. And he boasts of crossbowing starving citizens. The king tells her that only Jaime's capture saves her, that her mother's afraid that if they kill Sansa, Jaime will lose his life.
Right.
But he orders Clegane to beat her. Ser Dontos volunteers for the job with a Morning Star melon.
He thuds her over the head a few times, and she joins in the farce. She prays for Joffrey to laugh, but he doesn't. Rather, he calls on Sir Meryn Trant and Sir Boris Blunt of the King's Guard to do the job. Blunt punches her in the stomach and hits her with a flat blade across her legs. Joffrey has Blunt rip her dress. The Hound cries, "Enough!" But Joffrey disagrees. Only Tyrion's intervention stops the beating. He berates Trant and Blunt for their failures as knights. They argue that they're serving the king. Tyrion asks his nephew what Sansa had done. He replies that she has the blood of the wolf. Tyrion responds that Joff has the wits of a goose. Joff takes umbrage and says that the king can do as he likes, and Tyrion reminds the king of what happened to the last king who did what he likes.
Blunt sees this as a threat to the king, but Tyrion tells Bronn and Timett to kill Blunt the next time he speaks. Now that is a threat.
Indeed.
Sansa is handed the Hound's cloak, and she covers herself with it. Joffrey says that Mother has told him that fear is better than love. Sansa fears him, and it's true.
Yep.
Tyrion says that it's a pity that Stannis and Renly aren't 12-year-old girls. Bronn and Timett escort Sansa to the Tower of the Hand, where she hasn't been since her father's capture.
There, serving girls bathe and dress her, while she considers the fact that only 3 people who offered her help, Ser Dontos, Sandor Clegane, and Tyrion, are not knights. Every knight there beat her or let it happen, and she concludes that there are no true knights, and that she, like the Hound, hates knights. She's given ointment for the welts on her legs by Maester Franken, and some dream wine. She sleeps. When she wakes, she's alone and it's dark. There's a robe laid out for her, so she dresses, and in the outer room she meets Chella, who tells her that she is not to leave.
Sansa realizes she's in Arya's room, but no sign of her sister remains. Food is brought. Tyrion visits and explains more of the lost battle, dismissing the sorcery nonsense. He explains that he will try to prevent a marriage to Joffrey, and should Robb bend the knee, he'll send her home. He's so kind that she wants to believe and confide in him, but for now she maintains her "I love Joffrey" facade. She wants to see Ser Dontos, so she refuses the chance to stay the night in Tyrion's chambers, claiming that she would be afraid of the ghosts because her father's men died there.
I'm not sure anybody's buying that "I love Joffrey" facade anymore.
Well, I mean, but she has to keep it up. At least
She
in her
does.
mind, she has to keep it up.
Yeah.
Of course, you and I know that Tyrion is not playing her false here. Tyrion is not trying to lure her into dropping her facade
Right.
and saying, "I really hate Joffrey." He really means it, you know.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, it does feel like the classic good cop, bad cop scenario, you know.
Right.
The bad cops are beating her, the good cop is rescuing her to get the information out of her. you know.
Right. Building that trust so that she lets her guard down and says, "I hate Joffrey."
Yeah, exactly. She's watched enough TV to know not to fall for this trap. But unfortunately, in this case, she's wrong. She really should confide in Tyrion because he wants to help her.
Yeah. Now, just a quick reminder of where her head at least was earlier. If we look at the last paragraph of chapter 2, which was Sansa 1 in this book, she's thinking about Tyrion, and she says, "He speaks more gently than Joffrey, but the queen spoke to me gently too. He's still a Lannister, her brother and Joff's uncle, and no friend. She had once loved Prince Joffrey with all her heart, and admired and trusted his mother. They repaid that love and trust with her father's head. Sansa would never let that mistake happen again." So, she's many times bitten and many times shy, I guess, when it comes to trusting Lannisters.
Right, but the difference for me is that several times Cersei revealed her true colours. When she took Joffrey's side in the Battle of Darry Hall,
right?
She was clearly showing her true colours. There's no way on earth that anyone in the right mind could believe that Joffrey was telling the truth about that incident.
Right.
And Cersei was the one that demanded Lady to be killed.
Right, even though Lady literally was not involved in the least. Yes, right. You're right.
So,
yeah, I'm
whereas
sure
Tyrion has never done anything like that. Tyrion has only ever been nice to her.
Yeah, yes, you're right. I mean, to this point, he's had not that many interactions with her, but each time has been fairly positive, and it's taken her off guard each time it's happened. But you have to imagine that her head is kind of on a swivel, looking out for to avoid suffering more punishment than she's already been suffering.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say, I mean, and again, this is a lot of thought given to this. Well, although I have to say, if I was Sansa, I'd be giving this whole thing a lot of thought, because what else are you going to be thinking about? Right. The fact that you're the captive of the Lannisters. But it's like, how would it harm you to say you hate Joffrey at this point? Right. I mean, everybody knows you do. Yeah. Everybody knows you're keeping up a facade. They couldn't treat you an awful lot worse. I mean, I suppose because the meetings could be more often.
Right, yeah. I guess she's, at this point, somewhat conditionalized that the only defense she has from this punishment is to say, my family are a bunch of traitors, and I love Joffrey.
Yeah, I suppose we have heard previously that she doesn't get punched in the face.
Yeah,
because of that.
That is true, except for that she has gotten punched in the face.
Oh, yes, she did, yeah.
At I think it was the last Sansa chapter in a Game of Thrones, after Ned was killed, the first time that Joffrey came up with Sir Trant and Sandor Clegane, he told her, my mother says it's not kingly for me to hit my betrothed. So he had Trant hit her in the face and her ear was bleeding. Like, it hit her, smacked her in the side of the head and her ear was bleeding. So,
but that was a learning moment for Joffrey. From that point onwards, he realized he didn't actually like the effect of having her hit in the face.
Could be.
So,
yeah.
From that point onwards, he's instructed them not to hit her in the face. So, maybe that's the thing. Now she's like, well, as long as I say I love Joffrey, I'll only get hit in the stomach.
Right. At least my face won't get hit. Oof, how terrible. But Tyrion did pull her out of what seems like, in what we've seen to be the worst situation she's been in so far with Joffrey. This could have gone, who knows where it could have gone had Tyrion not stepped in. Yeah,
I mean, but the one thing is, Joffrey is showing some restraint here, because he did literally say, I'm not going to kill you because Mother says that will lead to Uncle Jaime being killed.
Yes.
So he is able to think that much strategically ahead, which is an improvement on when he beheaded Ned, say.
Yes, that's a good point. It is improvement over when he beheaded Ned. Not a lot, but a little.
Yeah.
But so when Sansa and the Hound are walking from her chambers down to meet Joffrey, her first fear is that Joff has found out about the meetings that she's been having with Ser Dontos. Now, it says meetings plural in the text, so it seems like there's possibly more than the one that we were witness to.
Right. So hopefully, my hope here would be that the plan that they didn't have after the first meeting is beginning to hatch a little bit.
Yes, I hope so.
Yes, because if they're just meeting up to see each other, they are running a colossal risk and they are stupid. They are indeed fools.
Yes, that would be bad if they were just like, hey, let's just hang out and talk for a little bit.
Right. Yeah, right. Because your traitorousness would be assumed, and they'd punish you just for doing it anyway. Just for having a friend, they would punish you both. They would kill Ser Dontos in front of her.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Just to make her miserable.
Yeah. But one thing I noticed was that there's a description when she's trying to make herself as pretty as she can because she thinks that Joff likes me when I'm pretty, and she puts on this dress and she thinks Joff likes me in this dress, he likes me in this color. And then the description mentions that the fabric of the dress is tight across her chest. And I wondered if that was possibly just a slight indication that she's nearing puberty, because that's also something at the end of the chapter that Tyrion asks her.
Right, because Tyrion literally asks her if she's flowered yet.
Right.
And she says she has not. Yes,
and she thinks it's a rude question, but of course she also thinks it's nothing compared to what I just went through. So,
right.
But the reason he asks it is because he wants to make sure that she is still a child, because if she's not still a child, then there's a greater likelihood that this marriage will go through.
Although, just a point of order here, hasn't a baby just got married just a few weeks ago in King's Landing? Yes. So, I mean, it's not that important.
Irma's son, Hayford, yes.
Right. So.
So I was looking it up. And so here's what Martin had to say about this whole concept. He said, in the general Westerosi view, girls may well be wed before their first flowering for political reasons, as we saw with little baby Irmisad. But it would be considered perverse to bed them, obviously. And such early weddings, even without sexual intercourse, remain rare. Generally, weddings are postponed until the bride is passed from girlhood to maidenhood. So I guess they're trying to do one thing official here. Wait until she's technically a woman.
Yeah. So when she arrives at the archery butts, she sees Horus and Hobber, Redwine, who are very much in the same boat as Sansa, in that they are basically captives. But they seem to be getting along better with the Lannisters. It's not like they're being beaten or blamed for anything. But I guess that's partly because of what their family is doing.
Yes, right. Cersei mentioned to Tyrion that it was her brainchild to take the Redwine twins hostage to keep the Redwines and their large fleet out of this war of the multiple kings here. Yeah, which is definitely a strategic advantage. I mean, King's Landing could be attacked from land and sea, and if the biggest fleet in Westeros joins in against you, well, there's the sea part. Right. Yes, it actually is. It worked out well that they were in town and stayed long enough to be taken hostage, or else the Reach would really have them. I mean, they already have by multiples the largest army. Then they would have this enormous Redwine fleet as well.
So it is interesting then that the Redwines are staying out. If the Redwines change their mind and join in, do you think Horus and Hobber will start to get treated the way Sansa's being treated? I guess probably so.
Possibly, yeah. I guess so. I mean, Sansa's being beaten not because she's Joffrey's betrothed, but because Robb is having success. Right. So it would stand to reason, yeah.
Right. And they might be even crueler to them because they're boys. I mean, like sending fingers home and things like that.
Yes, which was my suggestion to Tyrion to get some of that Arbor Gold wine that seems to be in very short supply in King's Landing at the moment.
Right. So Sansa, after the beating, she focuses on the cravenness of the knights. She is not wrong. I mean, they hold their vows way too lightly, because their vows are to protect the innocent, and they were either beating her or watching and not doing anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she said the only three people that lifted a finger were Ser Dontos, who tried to deflect by hitting her with the melon.
Yeah, right.
The Hound, who called for it to stop, and he absolutely refuses to be knighted. And Tyrion, who also isn't a knight.
Right. Yeah. And, she agrees with the Hound in hating knights. And if you think back to the early Game of Thrones Sansa, that's quite the big departure. Of course, her life is absolutely unrecognizable compared to what it was back then.
Right.
But it's a pretty big departure from someone who just loved and wanted to live storybook romances and gallantry and all that. But, general human decency should have prevented this. But there's also some conflicting issues that these Kingsguard knights have to face because they have two different vows that they've taken. They have the knight's vow, which is to defend those who can't defend themselves. Certainly that would fit Sansa right there. Protect all women and children. She's both of those. Obey but then here we go. Obey your captains, your liege lord, and your king, and to fight bravely. So, there's some mixed messaging there.
the fight bravely goes against them here.
Yes.
Beating up a girl is not fighting bravely.
Absolutely. But then the Kingsguard vow is to defend the king from harm, which he's not to Sansa. Obey the king's command. Keep his secrets. Yeah. Counsel him when requested. Keep silent when not. And defend the king's name and honor.
Oh, so you could argue that last one. Oh, I'm defending your name by not doing what you're asking me to do here.
That's true, because you're going to look really terrible for this.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, absolutely any human being should say, no, I'm not going to do that.
That being said, you say that from your position of living in a fairly stable democracy with the freedom of speech.
Very true.
It's a lot easier to do it here than it would be to do it in a kingdom where the king has absolute power and to say no to the king to his face.
Yes.
And he's absolutely awful. Yes.
Right. So, yes, you're right. Yes, it's very, very different. Because if they refuse, it could end up being them who Sir Illian is taking their head off with ice next.
Exactly, yeah. So the reason that they're beating her is because Robb has defeated the Lannisters once again in battle. Hooray for the Starks. So I don't know how this has happened, so maybe you can help me understand this. He has somehow skirted Jaime's... So we know Jaime's forces regrouped to the Golden Tooth. We know that.
Yes, Kat told us last chapter.
Right, which defends the pass between the Riverlands and the Westerlands.
Right.
So somehow he's circumvented that to get through to the Westerlands, to Oxcross, which is very close to Casterly Rock.
Very close, right.
And that's where, not Kevin Lannister, but Stafford Lannister was building the new army. That army's been decimated, Stafford Lannister killed. But how did they get around? How did they get there?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
Oxcross looks like it sits right on the River Road, which is the road from River Run to Casterly Rock. We know that the Golden Tooth has a really good vantage point of the River Road. It sits on a hill right above it. So it's quite a mystery, even to Tyrion. He says somehow they did this, so we don't quite get it.
Is there... Okay, so we're pretty sure they're not getting any help from the Greyjoys, because that would be one way. It would be go to the coast, sail around, and come up to Oxcross from the west. Sure. But that would take the Greyjoys, or perhaps the Red Wines. And we don't think that's happening.
No. Robb, I assume, still thinks that the Greyjoys are coming to aid them, but we know that they have designs to taking his homeland. So right. I don't imagine they then sent a fleet of ships to help him out.
Okay, so alternative theory for you then. What if the Starks decimated Jaime's army completely, went to the Golden Tooth and took the Golden Tooth, but sent Lannister messengers to Tywin saying, we've regrouped here at the Golden Tooth, we'll defend the passes, to make Tywin not worry about an attack on the west.
Yeah, right. That is a very interesting idea. Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know. I just don't know how it happened because the other ways through to the Westerlands are much more treacherous and mountainous, and it feels like it would be hard to take an army over them.
Yes, at this point, we do not know what happened. But the downside is that if this is accurate, that there's still a Lannister force at the Golden Tooth, it would make it hard for Robb and his army to retreat if necessary, unless they retrace whatever steps they took to get there. Right. But if the Lannisters can figure out what they did and put a block on that, then it could make it challenging because they'd be stuck between the coast and the Golden Tooth.
Although, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, that the Golden Tooth may only really be fortified on the eastern side. The eastern-facing side might be the side that's fortified. They're not expecting attack from the west.
True, that's true. I don't know. I did look up the layout of the Golden Tooth, what I could, and there was nothing that mentioned whether it was vulnerable. Like Mackelly is only vulnerable from attack from the north.
Right.
There was nothing like that mentioned about the Golden Tooth, but it's possible.
And I mean, the Bloody Gate has stood for thousands of years unbeaten. But only from the mountain road. It hasn't. If you attacked it from the Vale, you'd win easily.
That's right. The people at the garrison would turn around and just be like, "Whoa, what are you doing here?"
Whoa, yeah, exactly. So Robb's attack was by night. What they did was they loosed the Lannister horses and sent Grey Wind amongst the horses. The horses, of course, panicked and fled, and many of these new soldiers of the second Lannister army were trampled to death in their beds. So Stafford Lannister himself was killed by Rickard Karstark.
So, yeah, about Rickard Karstark killing Ser Stafford, I wonder if that might appease Rickard, because he's been extremely disgruntled over Jaime killing his two younger sons, Eddard and Torrin, but then Jaime was taken captive alive.
Right.
So maybe...
Yeah, that would presumably will help a little bit.
You'd think. Now, a little bit about Ser Stafford. So back in Cat 7 of Game of Thrones, her uncle, Brendan Tully, said about Stafford that he's the cousin and brother-in-law to Tywin and the younger brother to Tywin's wife, Joanna. And then that he's an old man and a dullard, and that his son Davin is more formidable. Now, we have no word on what happened to Davin, whether he's killed in this attack or he was even there or not. But so he's uncle to the Lannister siblings, Jaime, Cersei, and Tyrion, but not on their father's side. He's their mother's brother.
Okay.
But because they're all Lannisters, he still has the last name Lannister, because Joanna was Tywin's first cousin.
Gotcha. So this defeat of the new Lannister army from Lannisport has really opened up the West to Robb. He can do whatever he wants, it seems.
Yeah, what's he gonna do?
Yeah, he may have lost faith in Theon coming back with the Ironborn, but he may be waiting for them.
Right. I'd be interested to know what Robb thinks about that. He left Theon. He let Theon go to the Iron Islands with this plan of we're gonna go west, and I'm going to take the land, and you're going to take the sea, and we're going to crush the Lannisters. And he's like, okay, I've done my part. And is he still waiting for Theon, or has he started to realize, I've heard nothing from this guy since the day he left?
Yeah. He could stay put, and that would perhaps make Tywin ride west to confront him, allowing Roose Bolton in behind to sort of take Harrenhal back, or maybe move on down to King's Landing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. As long as they continue to move toward King's Landing and Lannisport, Tywin's going to have to make a decision. Does he go defend his homeland, or does he stay put in a location where he can defend King's Landing if necessary?
Yeah, I do think that he is just biding his time to decide what to do next, because Harrenhal doesn't have an awful lot of strategic importance to any of this. I mean, it's not a bad place to hold up, but
right.
He doesn't care about holding Harrenhal. He cares about King's Landing. He cares about Casterly Rock.
Exactly. Right.
And so he's between the two, holding a position that he just doesn't care about particularly.
Yeah.
But it's a great time for the Baratheons to attack King's Landing. Yeah,
especially if Tywin moves west. If he decides, okay, the pressing matter is I've got to go defend our homeland, Casterly Rock, and all the gold that Casterly Rock holds, and moves west, then it would be an especially good time for the Baratheons to, or one or both of the Baratheons to attack King's Landing, because Tywin can't help.
Even if not, it still makes Tywin's choice that much more difficult. Do I go to King's Landing to try and save my daughter, son, and grandchildren?
Right. Yes.
Or do I run back to try and save my homeland? Neither of those is it's not a slam dunk which one of those he would choose.
No, it's definitely not. Yeah.
But yeah.
So one of the things that's mentioned that Tyrion mentions to Sansa is that in this battle at Oxcross, several lords are killed, including and some 50 captives are taken. And Martin Lannister was one of the hostages mentioned. And so now all 3 of Kevin Lannister's sons are compromised in one way or another. Martin's twin brother, Willem, is held captive by Robb. And we know that Lancel is in this weird game caught between Tyrion and Cersei.
He's put his head in a noose, marked right. Jaime and Cersei. Yes.
Yeah. He might be, even though the other 2 are captives of the Starks, he might be in the worst shape being captives of his own family.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. The war may come to an end, but he's always going to be in trouble with Cersei and Jaime.
Yeah. He's going to have to sneak his way out of King's Landing if he wants any chance of surviving this. But one thing I wanted to mention is that Sir Lyman Vickery is mentioned as one of the lords or one of the people that were killed. And that is a nod to Jan Vickery, Jaan. Jan Vickery, which is a character in George Martin's first novel, which was called A Dying of the Light and was released in 1977. So I just thought that was an interesting thing there. And also, there's a typo in this chapter. He refers to a Rupert Brax being killed, but it's actually Rupert Brax.
How interesting.
So you'd think in all the...
And how do you know that? Just because it looks weird, or is he mentioned later on as being Rupert?
He's mentioned in the A Feast for Crows appendix as Rupert Brax.
Okay. Yeah,
and I looked it up in a wiki of Ice and Fire, and they go with Rupert. They say Rupert's a mistake.
Oh, there you go.
So
the question for me now, as I was sort of like moozing on a minute ago, is what does Robb do with this advantage? Now he's in the middle of the relatively defenseless Westerlands. I don't think Casterly Rock would be an easy nut to crack. It's a big rock, pretty defensible. But here's my suggestion. I hinted at it. March back up the River Road to the Golden Tooth, perhaps disguised as Lannisters.
Sure, you got enough Lannister stuff laying around.
Exactly. And take it cheaply and easily, and then garrison it, thus cutting off. I mean, you don't have to leave a huge garrison there. It's a very defensible place. It's like Moat Cailin. It's like the Bloody Gate. It's a place that is easily defended. So you garrison it with a few thousand troops, and then the rest of you head back to River Run, or wherever you're going next. King's Landing, Harrenhal, wherever you want to go. But now you've cut off Tywin's escape route by doing that.
Yeah. Kind of Trojan horse style. Go in there looking like Lannisters, and then, once you're in there, it's no longer quite as defensible as it was before when you're on the inside.
Right, yes.
Yeah, because you're right. Otherwise, it's a strong keep would be hard to attack because it sits on a hill.
Right. And if you remember, it was before Tywin's forces took Harrenhal, it was actually their launch point for their attacks on the Riverlands.
Oh yeah,
that's where they were based. That's where they were coming from. So it takes that away as well. So if you could get Tywin on the run, he'd be in real trouble. He'd have very little. He'd have no supply lines back home.
Right.
If the Baratheons could besiege King's Landing, he wouldn't be able to get supplies that way either. And he's burned everything that he was in amongst. So
yeah.
It's a pretty dire situation. And actually that brings me to my next point. Tyrion downplays it to Sansa. He says, winning a battle is not winning the war. But I think this is a pretty devastating blow for the Lannisters. The whole idea of this second army was to be a hammer and an anvil, sort of a pincer movement around Robb.
Right.
You can't do that with only one side of the pincer.
No, you sure can't. Doesn't work very well, does it? Yeah. You're right. It really hurts their plans. So, what could Tywin do? What does Tywin do? I was thinking maybe use Horus and Hobber's captivity to force the Red Wine fleet to sail to Lannisport and maybe help out that way. But I don't know how much a naval attack is really gonna help.
I mean, it's not going to protect the city from Robb if Robb attacks the city, I don't think, unless they bring a ton of troops with them. But where are they getting those troops from?
Right, the whole of the Reach is
right
with Renly. Yeah,
right.
Now, like you said, the sheer size of Casterly Rock is going to make it hard to take quickly. So maybe if the Golden Tooth really is manned by Lannisters, Tywin could catch Robb's army against the coast and Casterly Rock, because we've seen Robb win a bunch of battles against the Lannisters, but in each instance, it's been some sort of sneaky side movement, either at the Whispering Wood, trapping them, bringing them into an ambush, or catching them off guard at the Battle of the Camps, or here in the middle of the night. But how would they do facing Tywin's army head to head? That might be a different story. And that's probably what Tyrion is thinking. At some point, Robb's going to have to face my father head to head. Yeah,
that's a very good point. And probably Tyrion actually believes that. Probably not just telling himself that. He probably actually believes it. So we're jumping around in the chapter a little bit, but Joffrey, while he's bragging and terrorizing, that's his usual conversational style. Half brag, half terror.
Right.
He talks about killing hungry small folk. I killed a man last night who was shouting for bread like I'm a baker. I shot him through the throat with a crossbow. He's not very nice.
No.
I've decided.
No, he's not.
I've given him a fair crack of the whip, but no longer. That's it.
That's it. This is the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
He also shot a woman in the arm who was throwing rocks during this.
So not only is he evil,
mob.
He's not that good of a shot either.
Right. Well, we learned that. We knew that was the case when Littlefinger and Tyrion were watching him from Littlefinger's window.
He fires 2 crossbow bolts into a massed mob and kills one person.
Yeah. Now, this is the third time we've heard about a mob at the Red Keep and Joffrey lashing out with an attack. The first one was when Sansa snuck out to see Ser Dontos, and it was said that Joff led a foray into the mob. And then the second one was Tyrion said 3 nights before he met with Hallyne, the pyromancer, there was a mob, and Joffrey rained arrows down on the mob. And now this one was last night, so it's certainly separate from the other instances.
Yep.
And he's once again firing crossbow bolts into the mob. So he keeps this behavior up. Eventually he's going to light the powder keg that this city is becoming.
One thing I would ask, though, is how hardy are the citizens of King's Landing? I mean, right, they're hungry and they need to protest, but every time they go to the Red Keep, they get shot at and they keep coming back,
Good point.
I might be on the pigeons and the cats by this point.
If there's any left.
Right.
We know one of the cats is dead because Sansa walked past it on her way to see Joffrey. It was lying on its side with a crossbow bolt in it.
He is not a nice guy.
But this whole thing about his just total disregard for human life and for his small folk, it makes me think that it's pretty obvious. He seems to have absolutely no grasp of what the purpose of a king is, aside from being allowed to do what he wants. And I just wonder what kind of education he's getting, if any.
Yeah. That is a very good assessment of what he thinks being a king is. It's literally, you can do whatever you want. There's no sense of ruling. I mean, there's the sense of protecting the throne from threats, but that's it. I mean, that's the only thing he's doing that's even remotely kingly, and the only reason he's having to do that is because he's such a monstrous king.
Right. Yeah. You'd think that there would be a maester in charge of educating, or at least a septa, someone in charge of educating these kids. There was a reference to Tommen and Marcella walking with a septa when they came across Arya way back.
Yeah.
So maybe they were coming from or going to some sort of lesson or something. But this young man needs to be educated in the worst way.
It's not going to happen.
But one thing that we found, one thing that we got in this chapter, we almost got to see what would have happened, because we've discussed this in previous chapters. Joff tells the Hound to hit Sansa, and it was the first time that we've seen him ask Sandor to do this. Every other time, he's asked one of the other Kingsguard in the group. And we had discussed in previous episodes that maybe it was because Joff is afraid that Sandor might refuse him, and that will create quite the awkward situation. But we never get to see, because Dontos jumps in and starts hitting Sansa with this melon morning star. And but it would have been really interesting to see how the Hound would have reacted.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do it. He was given a command and he didn't do it. Instead, he let Ser Dontos do the farcical hitting her,
right, which,
as you point out, is not nothing to be whacked over the head by a melon.
Unless it's a very old, fragile melon. Getting hit in the head.
We practiced this week. I smashed him over the head with a melon. He didn't like...
I've suffered a concussion from it.
But he didn't do it. And then Joffrey, sort of like seeing that the Hound isn't doing it, gets Transom Blunt to do it instead. So it's like Joffrey remembered, oh wait, that guy's not going to do what I say here. So Ser Dontos' intervention allowed him to sort of like reassign the duty.
So as to not lose face a little bit when the Hound says, I'm not doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
But he didn't say that, he just didn't do it.
But he does say enough. After Joff has Sir Boris beat and strip Sansa, he says enough. And he also, when she was on her knees, when she first got there, and Joff said, kneeling's not going to help you this time, he helps her up, and the description is not ungently. And then when Tyrion shows up and says, someone give the girl something to cover up with, it's the Hound who takes off his cloak and tosses it to Sansa. So he's doing as best he can without violating his Kingsguard vow. Apparently he takes his vow more seriously than the other knights take their vows. Because
except the following the king's orders part.
Well, yes, that's true. Yeah. He didn't do what he was asked to do.
Yeah.
So Joff wants Sir Boris to make Sansa naked after Sir Boris beats her with the flat side of his sword of the backs of her legs, and the Hound says enough, and he says, no, it's not. Sir Boris, make her naked. And then, Sir Boris rips her bodice off to the waist, and then Joff says to beat her bloody, and that's when Tyrion shows up and stops the whole thing. But I wondered, the make her naked thing, I wondered if that was simply just as further humiliation, or is there some sexualized violence issues developing with Joff?
Well, let's be honest, they're practically inevitable. He has every other issue.
Yeah, well, yes.
So, yeah, I mean, my first take was he's just thinking to humiliate her, but you raise a good point. I mean, there's definitely a sex and violence thing being rolled together there, for sure.
Yeah. Now, he's only 13. I mean, Sansa 1 was at his 13th name day, so he might not have hit puberty yet, so...
Yeah, but he's at an age when your thoughts turn that way, even if your body hasn't quite got there yet.
True. Yeah. So there might be some sex violence confusion stirring in him.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Oh, good. Something to look forward to.
Oh, man. So Tyrion compares Joffrey to King Aerys II, the Mad King, and says if he doesn't wise up, Joffrey's reign is going to be as short as Tyrion is. And Ser Boris takes that as a threat to the king, and Tyrion says it's not a threat. And then he does threaten Ser Boris.
Then he demonstrates what a threat is by putting Bronn and Timmy. But you know what I noticed about that? He said, kill him if he speaks again. He speaks.
He does.
Like a paragraph later. I'm like, would you get on this?
Why
Does
is he nobody
still alive, follow
Bronn?
commands? Yeah.
But where I'm going with this particular thing is, I wonder if Joff took it as a threat. Joff seems a bit on the paranoid side. I wouldn't be surprised if he took anything that Tyrion says disparaging as a threat to him. And if so, will he react in any way to that?
The thing is, though, I don't think it was a threat. I mean,
it wasn't. No, I agree.
Tyrion's goal here is to educate his nephew, to say,
yes,
you're going to end up the way of the worst kings that have ever been if you continue to do these things.
Yes.
Don't do them, and maybe you'll have a long, successful reign.
I think that's exactly what he meant, yes. But I wonder if Joffrey took it as a threat, since Ser Boris did. But regardless, there's definitely some airing of major discord within the royal family here to quite what seems to be a fairly large group in attendance. And it certainly fractures any image of having things under control and all the royals pulling in the same direction. So that's not good.
Yeah. Tyrion does threaten to get Cersei involved, and Joffrey clams up and turns red at that point, which is slightly interesting because that suggests that Joffrey knows that what he's doing is unacceptable.
Right, that his mother would disapprove.
Right. Now, maybe she would only disapprove because of the strategic importance of Sansa Stark, but she would disapprove, and he's at least sufficiently aware to want to keep her approval.
Yes.
He's not completely doing everything he wants whenever he wants. He has got some phases and gates.
She seems to be just completely letting him run amok, unchecked. Absolutely no positive guidance at all. So far, under her regency, we've seen him kill Ned, beat Sansa, kill innocent small folk. So you could certainly see why Tywin sent Tyrion to rule here, because Cersei was letting the king behave like a monster, basically.
You could have sent Tyrion's horse to rule, and he would have done a better job than that.
But Joff lays the treatment of Sansa at Cersei's feet, saying, "My mother says fear is better than love." But as someone who has faced physical abuse from her husband, you wonder, is she aware of this? And if so, if she's aware and she's allowing it, how is she rationalizing that?
Yeah. I think Cersei is a real player of the Game of Thrones, and she can divorce her own painful abuse from what she orders to other people. You know what I mean? I think she can compartmentalize that. I was married to Robert, he was awful, and he hit me. Perhaps not quite as often as she claimed, but certainly we know for a fact he did. But these women need to be beaten, and I'm perfectly willing to see that happen because it advances my main aims. And so
I see what you're saying. Yeah, no, I do. I get what you're saying. She's doing things that she wouldn't want done to her and that she knows are wrong to advance what she feels she needs to do to improve her situation. Now, of course, you could make the argument that Joff is leaving Sansa's face alone, not just because he likes her pretty like he says, but to hide the evidence of the beating from Cersei. But of course, we know that Mare Trant, like I said earlier, hit Sansa in the face and bloodied her ear.
But again, maybe he got a telling off from his mother for that.
Yes, right. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But then again, if you're trying to keep it low key that you're for fun beating Sansa, you might not want to do it in front of everybody except your mother. She might hear about it. From, for instance, her lover Lancel Lannister, who's there.
Yeah, or half of court who seems to be there.
Exactly. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure I would snitch on Joffrey to anyone.
Solid point. Yes, that's a good point you make.
So later on, Sansa doesn't want to stay in the Tower of the Hand. The reason she gives is that she's afraid of the sort of the ghosts of the Northmen who died there would haunt her. But in reality, it's because she wants to get back to her own chambers from which she can escape in the night to go see Ser Dontos in the Godswood.
Yeah.
All that being said is, I don't know why they're meeting quite as often as they are, unless they're really hatching a plan.
Yes, they're in the final phases. Like, you know, here's what I need you to do for the next part of this mission to succeed.
Right. And actually, if you're that close, stop meeting. Finalize the plan tonight and stop any more meeting. You know?
But, we don't know what plan he has or if there's anything yet, but after seeing today's beating and how bad it could have been if Tyrion hadn't stopped it, might be time to step up the the timing of it all.
My worry is that the meetings are more Sansa's than Ser Dontos's, and they're more to do with her imagination of the Florian Jonquil thing that's going on between them, rather than the let's cut to the chase here, we need to get out of here, and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, if that's what was going on, then that's what this chapter would have been about. It would have been Ser Dontos saying, here's how we're getting out of here. Right. But that was not mentioned. Instead, we got the beating because that's all that's really happening to Sansa. And she's got a little fantasy world going on with Ser Dontos in the background.
Yeah, that could be very well true. It certainly would fit.
But fingers crossed. He obviously cares about her, so that's...
Yeah. He tried his best. He did what he could, and unfortunately it wasn't enough. But one thing about Sansa and the Tower of the Hand, she thinks to herself, the last time I was here was the day my father fell from grace. But more accurately, is the last time that she was in the Tower of the Hand is when she left to go to Maegor's Holdfast to tell Cersei Ned's plans to get the girls out of King's Landing. So
our listeners might have forgotten that, but I have not.
The sad irony is that this poor young girl is ultimately reaping what she sowed with that action.
Yeah.
Which is Oh, and one final thing about about Tyrion and his Hand of the King necklace. He's wearing a Hand of the King necklace, which the description refers to as his chain of office, which is a necklace of linked golden hands. But Ned, back in Ned 8 of A Game of Thrones, had a heavy clasp that clutched the folds of his cloak. It was an ornate silver hand. So there's different, I guess you could choose your own Hand of the King.
Or they forgot.
Or possibly.
Yeah. Possibly pedantry there. Yeah, good spot. Certainly, in the TV show, they certainly used it as the clasp. It was like a brooch with a hand.
Yes, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
So to background.
Well, so Ser Stafford Lannister died in this chapter, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about him, and well, mostly I was going to talk about his father, actually. He's the son of Ser Jason Lannister. Now, not the one, there's two Jason Lannisters. One was the Lord of Casterly Rock during the Dance of the Dragons. That's not Stafford's father. Stafford's father, Jason, was the younger brother to Titus, who is the father of Tywin, so Tyrion's grandfather. Therefore, Jason's line of Lannisters are the lesser line from that of Titus's more notable line, being Tywin and Jenna are the remaining children from Titus. But Jason did grow up at Casterly Rock, and eventually he fathered 8 children. His oldest being a bastard daughter named Lenora Hill, who he fathered off a serving girl from the Rock. A 15-year-old Jason deflowered a maiden named Alice Stackspear, and being that they were having a child together, the couple were married. Alice gave birth to Jason's first son, Daemon. However, Alice died during childbirth. And it seems as though Jason was maybe getting a bit of a reputation as a ladies' man, because after Alice's death, Jason was quickly remarried to Marla Prester, who was twice his age, in an attempt to prevent him from fathering any more bastards. The couple moved from Casterly Rock to the Feast
just a second,
Fires.
just interjection. So that was at 15, he had his second child?
Yes.
Bravo, Sir Jason.
I think that's why they were concerned when Alice died. We got to get this guy
down. Yes,
we either got to lock him up or get him married. But so Marla and Jason, after they were married, moved from Casterly Rock to Feast Fires, which is the seat of House Prester, which is Marla is a Prester. Now this info that I just gave there was in an earlier version of A World of Ice and Fire, but didn't make it into the final version. So therefore it makes it semi-canon-ish because it wasn't in the final.
George Martin wrote it, but it never made it to...
Yes, more or less, I guess so.
Right.
But now, if you think of the west coast of Westeros as a face, then Feastfire is at the tip of the peninsula that would be its nose. If you look at the west coast of Westeros, it looks very much kind of like an old man's face, with like a long, kind of hooked nose. It's at the very tip of the peninsula that would be the nose.
I feel like you're just making me work on the show notes now. But do continue.
All right. Well, the pair, Marla and Jason, had 6 kids. The eldest being Joanna, Tywin's wife and cousin, followed by Stafford. And then there's 2 more daughters and 2 more sons, but their names have not yet been revealed, so I don't know who they are. But because Jason's older brother Titus wasn't much of a warrior, it was Jason who led the troops of the Westerlands to the Stepstones, which are a group of islands in the Narrow Sea, during the War of the Nine Penny Kings. And sadly, Sir Jason died during the war on the island of Bloodstone.
Well, thank you, sir.
So now Sir Stafford has gone to join his father, I guess.
Yes, I guess so. So comparisons with the television show. This scene is co-opted into the throne room. Meryn Trant is alone and doing the beating. Tyrion, again, saves Sansa and apologises and then bullies his nephew. There is no follow-up scene in the Tower of the Hand. So it's all just that one scene in the throne room. Pedantry corner. I would like to say that when she arrives in the archery butts, people avoid her eyes because they know she's about to get some meanness from the king, so no one's looking her in the eye. Apart from Ser Dontos, who comes over and squeezes her arm.
And whispers in her ear.
I mean, do these people not understand the danger that they're in? I mean,
yeah. What happened to that whole if I'm mean to you when I see you or make fun of you, just know that it's just an act. Where did that go?
Right. And so and the whole going to the Godswood every night. They don't have anything to discuss. They got to play it cooler than this because the Lannisters are monsters. You cannot reveal your weakness to them.
True.
Sansa's weakness right now is the fact that she's found a flicker of hope in Ser Dontos. If they got wind of this, they would string up Ser Dontos in front of her just for laughs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, him helping her by hitting her with the melon, I get that part.
He's totally acting legit. The fool. Exactly. Right. But if you compound it with what you just did when she arrived, people begin to talk. People begin to say, you know what? He's really nice to that girl. Yeah.
He also says that she is shocked witless to Joffrey in an attempt to try and, to try and help ease the situation there. So, yeah, there's a few times when he didn't play it quite as cool as he's supposed to be playing it.
Yeah. News and notes.
So, George Martin has closed a deal with Random House and 10-Speed Publishing for a graphic novel called Voyaging, based off of a novella called The Plague Star from the Thousand Worlds stories, which also actually that book that I mentioned earlier, Dying of Light, is also part of the Thousand Worlds stories. And the graphic novel will star Haviland Tuff, which is a character in many of Martin's stories from that A Thousand Worlds series. So,
interesting.
If you're into his other stuff aside from A Song of Ice and Fire, you got that to look forward to.
Yeah. We had a YouTube review from Katura Spencer. This is one of my favourite podcasts and definitely the best non-spoiler one out there. I usually listen on Spotify, but it looks like your YouTube channel could use some views. I want to read that word as love. but she said views. Please keep up the good work. So that was very kind of you. Thank you, Katura Spencer.
Thank you. Yes, the YouTube channel, some of that's a little bit my fault because I'm not the most diligent about getting the episodes scheduled to publish Monday at midnight. But yes, I do the best I can with the time I've got. So yeah. I appreciate you checking that out, and I appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much.
Just occasionally the YouTube channel has our faces. I mean, generally it's just the audio, but just once in a while,
right,
we throw in video.
I started the YouTube channel because Ethan told me that a lot of people like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, and that some of his friends who have listened said, I wish your dad's podcast would be on YouTube so it would be more convenient for me. So I did it. The numbers don't quite match what our podcast pulls down.
or Ethan has fewer friends than he pretends. All right, let's conclude this one. So Robb has won another decisive battle against the Lannisters. This one appears to have once and for all removed the danger of complete defeat. I mean, he could still lose this war, but he's got escape routes now. Unless he stays put in the Westerlands and gets crushed by Tywin, right. If he goes back to Riverrun, he can always retreat north and no one can block him in now. Well, unless the Greyjoys are waiting for him, of course.
Oh, yes. He doesn't know about that, though, possibly.
Right. But I mean, I gotta say, unless the defeat was really, really heavy, he would have enough troops to defeat the Greyjoys on land. Sure, they've got the boats, but they're not that populous.
Right,
it's
yes.
going to be...
Winterfell is pretty far inland. I don't think anything they're going to fire from those ships are going to make it to
right.
Winterfell.
So again, Tywin's hope was that this new army would be the anvil to his hammer when he attacked from Harrenhal, but now Robb can always get away. So
yeah,
he's been sneaky to get the best of the Lannisters. He may have to face him in head-on battle at some point.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. It's like... like Tyrion just said, this war is going to end one way or another when my father faces your brother. And Sansa thinks, he's crushed your brother, he's crushed your uncle, he'll crush your dad too. And Tyrion was like, well, don't quite get too far ahead of yourself there, girl.
My dad's pretty smart. He keeps the good troops with him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so, he has the smaller force, and he's been using tactics to his advantage, but if he ever has to come face-to-face, head-to-head with Tywin, that could be a different situation. Or not, we'll see. And if the Baratheons can wrap up their squabbling long enough to attack King's Landing, which of course is certainly easier said than done, the Baratheons wrapping up their squabbling.
Yes, I was going to say, not that hard to do, just stop,
Yeah. It's a really good time to attack King's Landing, especially if Tywin moves west and leaves King's Landing vulnerable. If Tywin moves towards King's Landing, Robb pretty much has the run of the west, the Riverlands, the north.
Actually, what Robb should do is just follow him. He should follow him to King's Landing and then crush him between the hammer and the anvil. The hammer being him, the anvil being the Baratheons who just arrived.
Yeah, and of course, Roose Bolton has a rather large force just sitting at the Ruby Ford, who would be in prime position to move south and follow Tywin down there.
Exactly. But Sansa has some... this is a Sansa chapter. We often do this with Sansa chapters. We get off... Because Sansa chapters are often used as a sort of way of catching us up on events at King's Landing and the news that's coming into King's Landing. So we often forget about Sansa herself. But she's got some friends. The Hound, Ser Dontos, Tyrion. The only one of those she trusts is Ser Dontos. But I think she can trust the Hound to a certain extent, and she can certainly trust Tyrion to a large extent.
Yeah. She could trust him. We know that at the moment he has true intentions with Sansa, but also we also know he was playing her brother Robb false by sending ridiculous demands back in hopes that Robb would get distracted by that and allow the two Lannister forces to crush him. So if it came down to his agenda versus her well-being, she could be in trouble. But right now, with what he's offering, we know it's pretty trustworthy.
True. He's absolutely genuine in saying, if this war comes to an end in the way that I hope it does, I'll send you home. That's what that he's certainly genuine about that. But you're absolutely right. Fundamentally, he wants the Lannisters to win this war. He may be our favorite Lannister, but he is a Lannister.
Yeah. Yes. And I just wonder, does Cersei know what's going on with Sansa and Joffrey in regards to the torment that he's causing her, and if she is, how she's rationalizing that as someone who has faced similar abuse.
Given Joffrey's reaction, I'm assuming she doesn't know, because he was embarrassed with the thought of her learning of it.
Yeah, if you were gonna, like you said, if you were gonna do something you didn't want the Queen to find out, maybe don't do it in front of everyone inside the Red Keep.
While she's watching from the window.
Right. Not the greatest timing, but no one's ever claimed that he is a mastermind of anything, really.
So Ser Dontos, let's hope they're hatching a plan, but let's also speed it up, because Sansa survived today because Joffrey had a second thought about what he would like to do to her based on the whole situation that's going on. He doesn't always have second thoughts.
Right. And
we're lucky if we get one, to be honest.
Right. We get any thoughts. And we can't exactly be 100% sure that Jaime is completely safe in River Run. Something could happen to Jaime. He could end up dead. Right. And then Sansa would be, basically, she would be dead. Yes. She's right. That's one of the first thoughts in this chapter is, oh, please don't let Robb have killed the Kingslayer. If so, that means my life. And she's probably right.
Right. Although, I mean, even if that happened, I mean, like, so last chapter, somebody died, a prisoner died at Harrenhal. I forget his name.
Oh, Medgar Serwyn.
Medgar Serwyn.
Arya 7, yeah.
So prisoners do die because they're not, they're injured often. So Jaime could die. Something could happen to Jaime. I don't think Sansa would necessarily die there and then. I would imagine that they would try to drag Robb and Cat to King's Landing and execute Sansa in front of them. That would be
Lannister
how they would choose to do it. Yes, so she's okay. She's nothing to worry about yet.
Jaime's alive.
Yeah, exactly.
And as far as we know.
Yeah.
But so Tyrion wants to let Sansa out of the betrothal to Joffrey. Does he have the authority to do that? What's Cersei going to say about that?
But I mean, can Cersei still want that? I mean, I
agree.
The only thing is maybe she destroys the rest of the Starks and Sansa's the last remaining Stark, and she brings the North to heel by having a Northern Queen. But It does feel like it would be better. You'd be better suited maybe sending Sansa. Saying, Sansa, we'll spare your life if you'll go and rule the North as our liege, as our vassal lord, because we killed all the rest of your family. And then marrying Joffrey to someone more strategically important, a Redwyne, say, or a Martell. Or a Tyrell, but I just feel like Cersei hasn't really thought about it yet. And I think, to a certain extent, I also feel like they keep dangling this as a carrot in front of Sansa to try and keep her towing the line. But at the same time, they must know that that's not a carrot anymore for her. That's pure stick.
No. Right. Yeah. That's a stick, all right. A stick that's beating her.
Right, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it does seem pointless to try and carry on with it. And that's Tyrion's logic as well, is that it's a shame he felt like it was one of King Robert's better notions before Joffrey mucked it up, which he did by being Joffrey.
Yeah. And I think the real take-home message of the whole chapter is never trust a Westeros knight, because
No, the Hound sure doesn't. And it's worked out well for him.
I trust the Hound more than I trust the knights, to be honest.
I agree.
I don't think we'd be big friends, but
he's done some shady things himself, but at least he hasn't beaten Sansa.
Yeah. So as always, you can reach us at ghost.harrenhal@gmail.com, and you can follow us on Twitter at @ghostharrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Discord.
That's right. And if you wouldn't mind, please going out and leaving us a 5-star rate or a glowing review. We certainly would appreciate that. And if you do, we just might read it on a future episode.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.